Hey everybody, and welcome back to the 4th episode of the Group Project. Today I spoke to author Saturdead from Reddit, the talented author of the Blue Sunflower universe. One of the most talented and prolific writers on Reddit Nosleep, Saturdead has posted a weekly story for going on 4 years now. His stories from Tomskog have appeared on Lighthouse Horror, Animas Narrations, Mrcreepypasta, Mr. Creeps, and a lot of other channels. One of the few writers on Nosleep to create a self-contained universe with all of his stories taking place there, Saturdead's works are instantly recognizable, by way of his calling card, the notorious Blue Sunflower. We talked about the meaning of this floral totem, his favorite stories, sources of inspiration, stories from his childhood, and a ton of other stuff. This was one of my favorite discussions yet, and if you like the stories from the Tomskog universe, I think you'll be really excited to hear what he has to say. It turns out, the story he's been telling for the past several years is coming to a conclusion. We talked about that, too. Without any further ado, here's my hour-long discussion with Reddit author Saturdead. Enjoy.
I know what you mean. It's like, I actually went to my first real horror convention last year.
Yeah.
And in Nashville, the Nashville Horror Con. And actually just talking to people who like the same things that I do, that's something very rare where I'm from. So it's nice to just get out and meet like-minded people for a little while and just get to nerd out about things that nobody else cares about.
Yeah, it's such a weird, it's such a small community, especially people like other writers in posting on Reddit horror. I feel like it's a very, I was talking with somebody else, I can't remember who else I was talking with. I was like, it's not quite as small as the group of astronauts that went to space, but
yeah,
it's it's a pretty small group of people who write horror on Reddit and on Nosleep and have a following and get things narrated frequently and things like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm part of the group. I've been talking a lot to people who've been working on the Shadowbox archives.
Yeah.
I haven't posted anything myself, mostly because it feels a bit weird to post something because I want all of my things to be freely available for everyone at any time. So to me, it's like I wouldn't mind posting on other sites as well. I just don't want to split my audience. I want everyone to be able to know that when Saturdead posts something, it's going to be up on Reddit on Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, totally fair. Have you ever considered writing something outside of the, I don't know what you necessarily call it, the Tomskog universe, the Blue Sunflower universe?
Oh yeah, I've actually written quite a lot. I've been writing since I was a kid. It's so there's bound to be an archive of things, but most of the things I wrote before the Tomskog universe was first of all, it was in Swedish. It was all in Swedish, my native language.
Yeah.
But no one cared. It was I wrote several books, fantasy books, horror books, drama, and I'm pretty happy with all of them. These were solid stories, especially my fantasy novel. But it was in Sweden, the only thing you can really get published is crime and thriller stories. That's basically it. The Nordic Scandi crime thing. So it's if you don't have an in, then you're done.
What's that, sorry?
If you don't have a foot in the door with a publisher already that knows you personally, then you're done. You can't do it.
Yeah, I should say I meant more I did see on your subreddit, I think you mentioned something about how you've written a few other books and long stories, but that you haven't really released.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to release that stuff or get it published or anything like that?
I've been thinking about it, but I'm my own worst critic. Whenever I show my stuff to other people, they're always very positive about it. It's whenever I show my first drafts and stuff, people come with a few suggestions and they're if you fix these things, this would be perfect. But when you write something, and I'm sure you recognize this too, when you really immerse yourself into a story, you can see all the cracks in the veneer. You can see every little mistake in it that others might miss. So it's sure, I can fix those few things, but I will still see the errors. And it would be easier to just make the whole thing from the start, from the ground up. So I have several ideas for long form stories that I want to get out there too. But it's at the end of the day, it's like I have to be happy with it before I can let others see it.
Yeah, I definitely know that feeling. I often don't love a story. Like I've definitely put out stories that I didn't love, but it's like, okay, like I think it's good, but I don't personally love it for whatever reason. It just doesn't, it doesn't resonate with me as much.
Yeah.
But then put it out, and then you get a lot of positive feedback, and then suddenly you read it again, and it's like, actually, yeah, maybe this had more redeeming qualities than I thought. But yeah, I feel like we're our own worst critics as writers a lot of the time.
Definitely. And it's like some of the stuff that I put a lot of time in, that goes completely unnoticed. And then it's something like, then I might write a story that I just made because it sounded cool, and then it just gets like 5,000 upvotes, and I don't get it. So at the end of the day, I have to accept that I have no idea what I'm actually doing. So it's just, I just have to make something that I like. And as long as I like it, it's fine. I don't really look at upvotes anymore.
Yeah, my most upvoted story on Nosleep is like 5,000 upvotes, and it's maybe 1,000 words, and it was a commission for Dr. Nosleep that I posted on there. But it was basically about a mascot at a theme park who gets abused by a child, and then the theme park ends up turning the father and the child into hot dogs. Ooh. And it's like, it's a very stupid little, I mean, I thought it was funny, like the ending, the final line of the story is like, oh, hey, did you hear these things are made of assholes? So like, I thought it was kind of funny, but like, I didn't understand how, of everything that I have written over 4 years or 5 years or whatever, posting on Reddit, like that's the number one story. Like I've definitely written better things.
Yeah, but I think there's also something nice about that. Like people like simple stories because they have an easier time imagining it. So things like killer clowns or animatronics or whatever, like ghost stories are popular for a reason. Like they've been around for hundreds of years for a reason, because it's something that's easy to imagine. And I think that resonates with modern audiences too. So a lot of my really like high concept ideas, they either get really popular with a small crowd or go completely unnoticed. But some of the simpler stuff, that's like, that just explodes. Like one of my most popular stories was called That Summer I Had No Face. And I made that purely because of the title. It was the title that inspired me. I just woke up one morning and I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a story with this title. And just that visceral concept of having like an exposed face with nerve damage and all that horrible body horror stuff, that was enough. Like everything around that was just secondary. Just having that one core horror feature, that was enough to really resonate with people.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that title. You have a few really, really strong titles. It all turns to, like, your writing is amazing. Like, but you have a few really, like, very strong titles that really stood out to me when I like looked through your story list. Like, It All Turns to Rust. Such a great title.
Yeah.
I Was Hired to Notice Things Out of Place. That just like immediately catches your attention. You're like, okay, I need to read this.
Yeah. I have a few that I'm really happy with and a few that I'm really not happy with. But honestly, I kind of suck at titles. It's like titles are either the first thing I come up with or the last thing. There's nothing in the middle. Yeah. So either like the whole story is built around the title, or it's just like, oh, what the hell am I going to call this?
100%. Yeah, I know that feeling for sure. Yeah, I feel like I got better at it the longer I posted on Reddit. At the beginning, I was not good at titling things, and then after a while, you start to realize, like, kind of what people are looking for in a title and what people are going to read, what they're not going to read.
Yeah.
I found short, scary stories. You can do a little bit more literary, 1-word, 2-word titles, but it's going to be for Nosleep. Like, people want to almost get like a first-person title. They want to know, I'm a police officer in Ohio.
Yeah.
These are my stories or whatever, right?
Do you have a personal favorite from your titles?
Oh, personal favorite from my titles. That's a good question. I think it's probably I invented a new color. It's gonna kill a lot of people.
Oh man, I was not prepared for that second part. That's wonderful.
I really like that title a lot.
Yeah, I can see why. It really drives home. Like I was the first part is like, okay, I get it. That's no sleepy. That's cosmic horror. But then it's like, yeah, okay, now we're getting to the good stuff.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically like I don't know if you ever heard of there's like an artist who invented the color Vanta black,
Yeah.
and it's like the darkest black. So
Yeah.
it's kind of inspired by that, and thought of a similar character who comes up with a new color, and it's basically a mixture between green and purple, which are like my two favorite colors.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of an ending for it for the longest time, and then I think somebody came up with that subreddit idea, finish my no sleep.
Yeah.
And I posted on there, and just the first half of the story, and a reader actually gave me the ending to it. Of like, oh, maybe this color, because green and purple represent death, maybe this color is a conduit for Sharon or for death, kind of thing. And that actually really, really helped. Like, probably wouldn't have finished the story if not for that.
Yeah, like one thing that I like to drive home, because a lot of people talk to me about writing, and I love talking about writing in general. But I always get the question, like, where do you get inspiration from? And it's such a hard question to answer because there's no such thing as like one source of inspiration. You can get it from literally anything.
Yeah.
It's so like it could be like there was this one thing that I got so mad at a reader for. It sounds weird, but it's funny. So there was this reader who said, I dreamt about blue sunflowers, and I dreamt that the sun exploded, and in the explosion, the fire turned blue, and it expressed a sunflower. And I was just like, that visual is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so mad at you for bringing this up, because now if I were to use that, it would look like I'm copying you. And it's just like, you can it's things like that I first of all I love talking to readers about my writing and the Tomskog universe and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's also just like the ideas that people bring to the table. Some of the time it's like it's very far off from what I'm doing and what I'm planning to do, but sometimes it's spot on, and I just have to shut up about it because if I tell them, okay, that's it, then we're done. It's like that you got it.
Yeah.
So it's a fine balance.
So in relation to the Tomskog universe and everything,
Yeah.
do you have like a set end goal that if somebody commented something, and said, "Oh, this is my theory," that you would actually say like, "Oh, that's actually pretty accurate. Like that's pretty close."
Actually, I'm writing the canonical ending to the Tomskog universe later this year.
Oh wow!
It's one of the things I brought up in my 4-year anniversary video, but it's like
yeah.
A lot of people have been asking me like, how long am I going to do this? And the answer is I'm going to do it as long as I can because I love doing it. Writing to me every week is a way to clear my mind. It's a way to take all the anxieties and stress of the week and just pour it into something that other can relate to.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like I want to keep doing this forever, but I also want to tell a story, a cohesive story. So I'm going to write something called The Last Year Walker, at probably around December. And it's going to be like the canonical ending to this part of like, it's going to be like about the town of Tomskog and the characters we've seen. But it's not going to be like the end of my writing. It's just going to be an end to a part of it. So there's still going to be blue sunflowers. There's still going to be horrifying creatures. But there's going to be like a canonical ending, so you know what happens.
Okay. And it makes me wonder if it's going to be suitable for no sleep, because it seems like everything's ramping up. I'm sure you have a good plan, but everything's ramping up to this point where it's like, this is going to be a global, worldwide event, it seems like. And it's hard to imagine in the no sleep rules how you're going to get away with that. But I'm sure you have a plan.
No, I know what you mean, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about. But at the end of the day, it's like, do I want to tell a story or do I want to tell a story appropriate for no sleep? And the answer is that telling the story always outweighs posting on no sleep. So I might well have to bring that story off no sleep. But I still have my subreddit, and people can always see things that I post there. And I think that people would notice if I were gone for too long, and they might check it out. So I don't mind posting to a smaller audience if it means I get to tell the story the way I want to.
Yeah,
100%. So that's not going to be an issue.
Okay, yeah. I imagine, you're not going to change your creative vision to make it fit the moderator's rules. Like I've done the same thing in the past, like with a big long series. It's like, okay, I know what the ending is, but I don't want to change it for the rules, so I'd rather just post it to my own subreddit.
Yeah, if I can do it without compromise, then yes, I would post it on No Sleep, obviously. But I don't think I can, because as you mentioned, it is apocalyptic, because that's what the Tomskog universe has been about. Like if you follow the lore for a while, and it's a sprawling mess of a lore, but that's kind of the point. I wanted this to be like a blank canvas where I can throw any and all of my ideas at.
Yeah.
And I also want some cohesion, and I want there to be like an end point. So the end point has been teased for a long time that the Earth or the planet or the reality that we live in is basically breaking apart at the seams. And the sunflowers are like the redness at the edge of a wound. They're like a sign of infection, sign of something bad happening. And I have to bring the bad to the surface. Like we have to take it to the next level, or else it's not going to be like the full story.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one you posted, I guess it was yesterday.
Yeah.
About the TV show, the one that takes place in Canada.
Yeah.
First of all, I love it takes place in Canada. I live in Canada, so I love that. That put a smile on my face immediately.
I'm glad to hear.
But then I started reading it, and I love stories with the idea of a lost TV show or a lost TV channel. Like I've seen those a few different times, similar concept. But then the direction you went with it was completely unexpected, and I really loved it. I think it was maybe my favorite story of yours that I've read so far.
That's awesome. I'm glad you liked it. Well, I usually have a couple of stories that I work on at the same time, and this was originally not the one I was going to post this week. But the other story, I worked on that for 4 days, and I just couldn't get it to click. But then I was like, I'm just gonna move down the list and check out the next I'm gonna write. Yeah. So this was originally scheduled for next week, but I was like, I'm in a flow, it works well, and it feels right. So that's usually how I work. I have several stories up in the air at once, like juggling balls. Mm-hmm. But I usually, if I don't get one to work, I go on to the next one or the next one or the next one. So I have like this list of sometimes really specific things and sometimes just very vague hints with a very strong concept.
Yeah, I do the same thing, actually. I have 2, 3, sometimes 4 stories on the go at a time. Yeah. And it's almost like a painter, like you're working on something for a while and it's like, oh, I don't like the look of this. Like, I kind of hate this right now. And then so you go to the next painting and then you work on that for a while and then you look back at the other one that you were just working on. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe if I do this to it, then, it'll pop a little bit more. But yeah, I find that really helps me as well to get inspiration to just kind of sit on things. And then I find sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks later, something will pop into my head. It's like, oh, that's where the story goes next.
Yeah.
But is your timeline a lot tighter usually? Like, do you find you start writing something and then like within a week or two it's finished?
Honestly, most of my ideas get worked on. Well, and the idea itself gets worked on for weeks on end. But once I have the idea and the concept, I usually write up like a short bullet point list. This is what's going to happen. These are the 12 steps, the 13 steps, 14, 15, 20, whatever. and then I just go to town because I have this clear vision in my head, and then I just bring it to word. So most of the time, the meat of the story is written in 2 days, 1 or 2 days.
Okay, so you outline first, though.
Yeah, I always outline. I always plan ahead, but the writing itself, like the one that I posted yesterday, that was about 6,300 words or so. I wrote that yesterday. That was like 1 day, because I had such a clear idea of what I wanted to tell and the way I wanted to tell it. So there was no challenge. It was just a matter of time.
Wow, it's impressive.
It's a matter of routine. I think anyone could do it, but it's not suitable for everyone. For me, it's like I have set aside Friday nights for writing for 4 years. On Friday night, no one calls me, no one texts me, and we schedule everything that we should do on Friday to Saturday instead. So all my friends do other things on Friday because they know I won't be available. And that really helps, because then I have no excuse not to just immerse myself in whatever story I'm writing. So I don't think that's for everyone, because not everyone can do that. But I have that. For me, it's cathartic. It's like the work week is done. I just get myself a pizza. I sit down in front of my computer. I put on some nice, relaxing music, and then I just write until I'm done.
I'm the same way. I like not exactly, but like I just find writing, the process of it, to be so relaxing, and so it's like my entertainment. And a lot of people don't understand that, but it's entertaining for me, like crafting a story. But it's a lot of the time, it's just a matter of finding the time to sit down and do it, because life is so busy. So that's good for you that you set aside that time and you stick to it.
Yeah, well, it's I totally get what you mean with it being entertaining, because we are our own first reader. The story unfolds to us as well. So it's like, if I like my story, others are going to like it too. So you are your own first test reader and your own first proofreader, and whenever something feels off to you, then I figure it's going to feel off to everyone else as well. So it's also just fun to get that final, like when you get it to click. It's hard to explain. But for example, the story I wrote yesterday, well, sure, I've been writing it in my head for a while, and I know what's going to happen, and the story beats I'm going to bring up and stuff. But when you finally get those things to really click, for example, I planted the idea of a moth's wings as like a mental sound, and I wanted to have a certain meaning in the story. And when I finally could put that all together as a cohesive theme throughout the whole story, and then have a final line referencing it, it just brings it all together. And that's incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, it's that feeling when you get a good ending, like when you get down that ending that actually feels satisfying. There's definitely a feeling of like, okay, this is complete now. Like, this feels right, you know?
Yeah.
I love that. I don't want to give away too much in case anybody hasn't read it, but the whole thing with the moths was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
When the main character starts seeing them and kind of the climax of the story, I thought that was very well done.
Thank you. I had this. I've had moths as a theme in quite a few stories. I actually wanted to write a long form story about them. It was called The Moth Boy. And I actually finished the story. It is a complete, like, 60,000 word novel, but I just wasn't happy with it. It's still left somewhere in the back of my computer, but it's like, I can do better. So at the end of the day, it's like, do I want to release something that I know I can do better, or should I wait until I actually do better?
Yeah.
And I will always be on the side of waiting, because I have no hurry to get something published, to get my name out there or whatever. I'm happy where I am.
Yeah. How did you? Sorry, go ahead.
It's just kind of funny though, because this has been a continuing thing. Like, I wrote a story a couple of years back called Nobody and I, and this was way before Nosleep. And I printed out a few copies to just hand out to a few friends of mine and family and stuff like that, because a lot of people were curious about what I was doing all day. And a copy of that actually ended up with I don't want to say any names, but a large and pretty popular Swedish Hollywood figure. So he has been in several movies, and I see him quite regularly in movies, and I'm just like, that guy's read my book. It's such a weird feeling, because the only thing he had to say about it was this would make a great TV show. That's all the feedback he gave, and I was just like, oh my god. He said that about something I made, and now I'm watching him on the big screen. So it's like,
now you have an in if you need an actor for an adaptation in the future. You know?
Oh man, I think it's I don't want to toot my own horn, but I like imagining what my characters look like, and most of the time it's really hard because it's like, I don't know who could bring something like this character to the big screen. But sometimes you just get like a vision. Sometimes you get like a person or a voice or a face in your head, and you're like, that person would fit perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one of those for one of my series too, who's like, if I ever had any say whatsoever, if this ever got turned into a movie and I had any say whatsoever, I'd be like, can we just ask this guy if he's available?
Can I ask who?
Oh, I forget his name now. Have you seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
Yes, I have.
Yes. So it's, oh my god, I gotta look it up now because it's gonna kill me. It's the blonde guy.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. He was in Firefly, right?
Yes, and he's also in a great Alan Tudyk.
Yeah.
Alan Tudyk. He's also in a great show called Resident Alien, which I've been watching. It's on Sci-Fi Network here. You can get it on YouTube. You have to buy it on YouTube as well if you want to watch it. But it's like a fantastic sci-fi comedy show.
That's actually on the Swedish Netflix. So.
Oh, cool! So have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. I've seen that it's there, but I haven't clicked it because the vibe I got from the little pictures was that it was a funny show, and I was like, I want to look at scary stuff.
Oh no, it's like I cannot recommend it strongly enough. It's fantastic. Alan Tudyk is amazing in it, and basically he plays an alien who comes to Earth and takes over the role of the town doctor.
Yeah.
And he looks like a human being. Everybody thinks he's a human. There's only one kid in town who can actually see that he's an alien. And so he just has to like discredit this kid and call him crazy and stuff, basically. But it's a really funny show. A really good show.
I didn't know he starred in that. Then I gotta check it out.
Yeah, he's great in it.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes you just like a couple of my favorite actors are one of my all-time favorite actors is Sam Neill. So like after seeing him in movies like Event Horizon and In the Mouth of Madness, it's just like that he does horror so well. It's like I couldn't not want him in one of my shows or a movie or whatever. I just want to see more Sam Neill.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, he is very good. Have you ever like been approached, or even from like a small film creator or anything like that, to do any sort of adaptations of your stuff?
Yeah, it happens a couple of times per year, but it's mostly like student films and such. And I don't like. I like to have my work publicly available because I want to inspire others, and I want people to do like their own thing with it. So I've been asked things like, can I make stories that reference your stories? Sure, absolutely, go ahead. Can I make video games that use character designs of yours? Sure, absolutely. Not a lot of them have come back to me about it. There was a Polish game developer who wanted to make something reminiscent of The Girl Who Drank the Rain.
Okay.
I don't know what happened to it, but they got the green light for it, so I don't know, maybe it pops up.
Yeah, that was a great story. So many things get optioned or get sold and then don't get made too, so it's tricky. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've had the same sort of thing where I'll get somebody will reach out about a movie, like just a small, independent
Yeah.
thing, and or a video game or something like that, and then I literally never hear from them again.
Yeah.
But
I think they want to ask early on, because if they got a no halfway through production, then they would have to scrap everything they've made. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people just asking up front just in case they go through with it. And I don't mind that at all. I'm the kind of guy who likes to, if I don't mind starting 100 projects if it means I finish one of them, because that's one more than someone who hasn't tried at all. So I have 100 things that just lie around that I haven't done anything with or haven't finished, but at least I've tried.
yeah,
So I don't
uh,
mind others doing that too.
I saw in your 4-year video about living in Scandinavia and how you have like the perpetual darkness there.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like I live in Canada, so we have fairly dark winters here where it's probably 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. You get a bit of light, but so is it like 6 months a year or how long? How much out of the year there?
I'm excierating a little bit, but it's
Okay,
easily like 4 or 5 months of winter. It's like because I live in northern Sweden. Sweden is a tall country. It's not wide. It's tall. It's like a big L piece. But I live very far up north, not like in the popular places like Stockholm or Gothenburg, but far up north.
right.
And there we have even darker winters that last longer. It's actually, for example, we have a university in town where a lot of students from abroad come and study. And it gets so dark here that people who come here from other countries need light therapy in order to not get seasonal depression. So they have this room at the university that's just white. Everything's just white in there. And you need to go there to get like to remember what the sun looks like. Because you're going to wake up and it's dark. You're going to go to lunch and it's dark. And you're going to go home and it's dark. And that's going to be November through at least January.
Okay, so like 3-4 months basically of.
Yeah, you're going to have at most like 1 or 2 hours of sunshine, and it's usually in the middle of the day when you work.
Okay, yeah. I did 12-hour shifts for a long time at the hospital. I used to be a nurse, and so I would go to work 6 a.m., come out at 7 p.m., and never see the sun at all during the day. It's very depressing.
Well, I find it comforting.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, it makes me feel like I haven't missed anything. Because it's just like, the day just keeps going.
Yeah.
It does mess with your sleep rhythm, though. Because you sometimes, especially like in the early winter, because then you forget like what time of day it is. And then when the sun comes out, the sun has like started to come out now in March. And then you're just like, oh, right, that's what it looked like. And it can be weird because it actually has like a physical effect on people. You can actually feel different. And I don't think a lot of people are used to living in that sort of condition.
Yeah, it's definitely not the norm for most people.
No. And honestly, I actually come from an even smaller town, even further inland. And it's like a really old, like Iron Age village.
Right.
but they have internet, so it's fine. But it's like a really old Swedish village, and back there it was like we didn't have anyone to clear the streets, so we had to do it ourselves with shovels. There were like we couldn't get like gravel to counter the ice, so instead we have to chop down birch trees and pine trees and lay out branches in order to get some traction.
Yeah.
So it was like really rural, but we still had internet, so people had an escape. But it's like when you live in that kind of environment, and it's just like this oppressive darkness, and there is wildlife everywhere. Like we can have a moose that's trying to get in through the kitchen window. You can have like a lynx that's hunting the neighborhood cats.
Wow.
And in that environment, you're like, yeah, there's gonna be some scary stuff out there. There's a reason people don't go out at night.
Yeah.
And I
That's wow.
think
That's a good environment for writing horror.
it really is. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that I write, sure, some of it is inspired just by anxieties and fears and experiences, but it's also just like memories. Like,
Yeah.
I have this one vivid memory of going out with my mother, and we were going up this long, long white hill in the middle of the day, and it was like bright sunshine, everything was fine, and we were going to see my dad, who was ice fishing, and we just hear a roar, like this tremendous roar, and we see the trees starting to bend. And my mom just kisses me on the cheek, puts me on a little snowmobile, and just says, "Run." And she pushes me down the hill. And it turns out it was a bear. I didn't know anything at the time. I was a really small kid. I just know that my mom is screaming. I'm told to run, and there's no adults here. So I just kept going until I got home. And she was fine, everyone was fine. But just that feeling, like that primal fear of something might eat me, that's something that sticks with you. That's just like, you can't get that in a city. There's no equivalent.
No, there really isn't. I mean, maybe getting mugged and almost killed by a robber or something, but yeah, wow, that was that a very would you think that was impactful on like you as a writer, like that experience of encountering like an actual monster in the woods, basically?
I think, well, everything affects everyone in different ways, and sure, that was impactful in a way, because it made me feel like an animal, it made me feel less than a human, because for a moment I was not just a little boy, I was prey. And just that feeling is something very different from being threatened with violence or being in an accident, because it's very primal and a very natural feeling. And it's also just like you get that glimpse of realization that nature doesn't care. And that can be terrifying in a whole other way. And there's been a few stories that I try to incorporate that in. I did one called Look at the Birdie, which was directly inspired by this event, but I wanted to do a little creature feature too. But it's just like that feeling of something that just sees you as meat. That's, it's difficult to explain.
Yeah, those experiences though, it is amazing how they combine, like, all those life experiences really find their way into our writing. Like, even just you talking about laying down branches, like trying to get out of town and things like that, and trying to clear the streets, reminds me of one of your stories, I think. Like, did you use that detail in one of your stories once?
I think I did. I think I used the laying down pine branches to gain traction in a story.
Yeah.
I do remember using that. That was like, that was in a story. I think it began with that because there was a story about someone leaving a small town.
Yeah,
because that's literally a story from me leaving my small town. The neighbors had to go out, chop down pine branches, and lay it out on the road for us to gain traction enough to get the moving van going. That was literally something that happened, and that was like, I think it's a nice detail to show the kind of small town community that we had, but since I had it, I'm sure that others have had it as well. So at some point as a writer, you have to realize that you're not really experiencing something unique. Everything that we have experienced, someone else has experienced too. And putting that to word, like bringing that out as a story, can resonate with people in a way that other things haven't.
Yeah, and you're also broadening those people's horizons and showing them a side of the world that they maybe have never seen or thought of. Like, most people are live in cities and have a snowplow running down the street if they have snow, and
Yeah.
it's kind of it's interesting to hear of that perspective of like everybody in town, everybody in the village pitching together to help this one person who needs help.
Yeah.
Um, did you read a lot when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, all the time. I read so much that I didn't have anything else to read, and that's one of the reasons I started to write, because I wanted to have more things to read.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I remember back in school we had something called Berättarboken, or the storyteller book, where every kid once per week could write a story, and I loved this thing, and I took it home and I wrote in it every day, and I actually finished the book. So I couldn't write anything else because we only had that one book to write in.
Wow.
But then my mom just told me, like, Dennis, you know that notebooks are really, really cheap. You can have as many as you want. And that was Christmas. That was like, I can do this all the time. And that was just like, since then they just kept handing me notebooks. I wrote my first actual full-sized long-form story when I was 7 years old. And it was like a 90-page fan fiction of Jurassic Park or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, to me, that was it was everything. It was like that. This is what I do all the time. It's just something fun to do instead of playing or whatever. Just because I wasn't just telling everyone else a story, I was telling myself a story, and putting it to paper made it real.
Yeah, I say all the time I write things that I would want to read because I'm kind of selfish, and like I love watching movies and reading stories like with the hunting humans theme. Like I don't know if you've seen movies like The Hunt or like Ready or Not or Deadliest Game, all these types of things. And I just love stories like that. So every once in a while, I'll just write one myself just because I love stories like that.
Yeah.
And it's the nice thing about being a writer is, you can do it. If you're doing it for the right reasons, you should be doing it for yourself. Like you should be writing something that you want to read, and if other people want to read it too, then that's amazing.
Yeah, but it's also just that thing that if you genuinely like what you do, then others are going to like it too. Because I have yet to find a person that no one else can resonate with in any single way.
Yeah.
So yeah, sure, your audience might be small, your audience might not like the exact same things as you do every week or whatever, but there will be someone who does. So I like to remind myself whenever like a story that I put a lot of work in doesn't explode online or whatever, I like to remind myself that it's just a matter of the right people finding it. It's not a measure of the worth of the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would always be happy when I was posting more on Nosleep. I don't as much anymore, but when I would post on Nosleep, if I would get one follower or one subreddit subscriber, it would be a win in my book.
Yeah.
Because it means one person read it, found it, and decided to follow me. They liked it so much. Yeah. Even if it only got 10 upvotes or whatever.
Yeah, but there's also a matter of perspective, because we get so fixated on numbers, and I do too. Everyone does, but it's this thing that 10 people is not a small amount. 10 people is a significant amount. I couldn't host 10 people at my place, so it's like even though that number might look small in comparison to these monster 10,000 plus things, it's still a sizable amount of people. And if those 10 people genuinely enjoyed what you did, then one person has provided 10 people with something of value. And that's not something to flick your nose at. That's significant.
And that's just the people who uploaded it. There's still lots more who read it and didn't interact with it in that way.
And that's only like in one space. I love to see my work getting narrated, for example. I wanted early on to establish that all my work is publicly available as long as I get credit for it, because I don't want someone to say, oh, I made this. So I wanted to establish early on that all my work is freely available for narration. And that's because I genuinely love seeing people interact with it. I like to see how people pronounce things, how they pronounce certain things or enunciate, or how they bring certain gravitas to parts of the story.
Yeah.
And and then because then there's an entirely new audience that I couldn't be able to reach, and they can experience something that they might like, and that makes me even happier because then there's more people who enjoy it.
Can I ask who do you like most? And I'll say present company excluded. Who who do you prefer? Who's your favorite person to read one of your stories?
Oh, that's really difficult because a lot of people do it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
For example, man, I don't have a. I can honestly say that I don't have a favorite because a lot of people bring different things to the table.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Vidith22 made a narration of the Yearwalker, my 13-part series, and it's like 13 parts as one long audiobook, and I really enjoyed how he brought it to life because it was such a tremendous effort on his part that I felt like, yeah, he did it justice.
Nice.
But there's also I was surprised to know that I actually have a significant following in China. I had no idea about this until a few months ago. There's a Chinese content creator who got my permission to do this, who has been posting on Chinese social media, and he has a significant following. And they have entire groups with theory crafters discussing the Tomskog universe and their own community.
Wow.
And I had no idea about this. So he actually contacted me a while back and asked me, do you have anything to say to your Chinese fans? Because there's thousands, tens of thousands of them.
Wow.
So it came out of nowhere. So I like that too, because it's an audience that otherwise wouldn't be able to take part of what I made. And so there's no single favorite. I'm sad to say because a lot of people bring different things. One of the narrators.
Are there a couple that you want to shout out that you really enjoyed their particular readings of a certain story, or you like them all kind of thing?
Well, it's difficult. For example, I like Animas. He made a couple really good ones. I actually guest starred as in one of them as a killer.
Oh, I love
and I also like I don't remember at the top of my head, but I think it was Mrcreepypasta.
Yeah.
He'd made just the other week a great rendition of my story I Love Pinball.
Okay.
And Lighthouse Horror.
Yeah.
He has done several of my stories, and I think he really brings them to life.
Yeah, great choices. Yeah, those are all very solid.
Yeah, but they all do it in different ways. So I wouldn't say one is necessarily better than the other. Also, they usually tell different stories depending on what kind of stories they enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there has ever been a story of mine that just everyone has read. So there's usually a little difference in which gets read and which doesn't.
Yeah.
And I like that. It brings some variation to it.
Yeah, it's nice. I agree. I always like seeing when somebody narrates my work, assuming they have my permission, my blessing to do it.
Yeah,
you're very generous, by the way, to just say, just give me credit and anybody can narrate this stuff because I won't go any further than that, but it's extremely generous that you do that.
I know that's a point of contention too, because I completely understand why people wouldn't do this. Because yes, it's a lot of work, and yes, I don't want it to be taken for granted and stuff like that. It's just my personal preference. So I don't blame anyone else for having a different set of rules. I just remembered another shout out I want to do is Dark Soul Horror. He reads in I think it's Spanish. I'm not very good at Latin American languages. La Dama de Blanco, also one of the Spanish narrators, one of the few female horror narrators. I really enjoy her work.
Oh, cool! There's not enough of those.
Yeah, I've seen a few, and there was one I can't remember the name, and it's gonna haunt me. But she made this amazing rendition of one of my stories. I don't remember. The Broken Dancer of the Ghost Ballet was the story.
Okay.
And she made an amazing rendition of it. And I haven't seen more of her work since, but I was just like, you gotta keep doing this. But I haven't heard anything from her since. So it's like, I love seeing new creators get into the scene as long as they put like some honest effort into it.
Yeah.
And there are several who do and some who don't, and you can usually tell pretty early who does and who doesn't.
Yeah. Some people have a lot of chops. Like people are very good at voice acting, narration. Like I'm self-taught. I feel like I've gotten better along the way. But it's amazing. Some smaller channels, like I'll go listen and it's like, wow, like this person sounds like a professional voice actor. Like they're really good.
Yeah, I think that depends on the, well, obviously on the background of the narrator, but there's also like a surprising amount of careers and jobs that actually lend themselves pretty well to the experience of narration. For example, I'm not a professional narrator, but I'm a teacher. So I'm used to explaining things to people, and that comes off as being a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what I do. I'm a teacher. But some people are like, man, you're really good. It's really nice to listen to you. Yeah, because I spend 8 hours a day explaining things.
Yeah. I'm sure that helps.
Yeah, it does. But it's also like, sure, there are two completely different things. But if you're used to talking a lot, then it translates into a lot of other things.
Definitely, yeah. It's amazing how our 9-to-5 jobs will often translate to whatever else. Like nursing for a long time, being a nurse, I feel like I've gotten good at communicating with people, and that's one thing that I've taken from that job is the ability to just quickly communicate with people or effectively communicate with people.
Yeah,
which is a good skill to have for sure.
What
do you teach?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask, like, as a nurse, you also have to be ready to communicate to people in very different stages of, people in various stages of distress. Like very calm people or very stressed people. You gotta learn to handle both of them very effectively. So you gotta like. I'm guessing you're pretty good at adapting.
Yeah, handling emergencies, handling tough situations is something. Yeah, adapting to stressful or emergency situations is definitely a skill as a nurse that you gain after a while. I remember a patient asking me, I can't remember what was happening. I think we had 2 code blues on the floor at the same time, which is basically like a cardiac arrest. Like you have to call a specialized team to come resuscitate somebody. And I think we had 2 of those happening at once, where 2 people both had a cardiac arrest at the same time.
Wow.
And the patient was like, how are you so calm right now? And I just remember saying, like, would you want me to be freaking out right now? Like, that's not going to help anybody. Like, it's kind of comes with the territory, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. I'm a programming teacher.
Okay.
So it's very basic programming. It's like high school programming. Mm-hmm. So it's like very basic stuff like variables and while loops and whatever. So it's pretty like simple things. But I think a lot of people have noticed that I like to bring technicality into a lot of my stories. Mm-hmm. I wrote this story called Rattler a couple of weeks ago that was very technical. Mm-hmm. And it's just because I always try to anticipate what people are going to ask. So like when someone brings up this thing wouldn't work, then I'm like, yeah, it would because it does this. So I hate the thing where, I mean, sure, there's always going to be inconsistencies because of writing fiction and we're experimenting with things. And sometimes I get tired of explaining things because a lot of modern horror audiences like to have things explained.
Yeah.
But like, have you looked at the original Dracula, like the original Dracula from the 20s?
I have it actually. It's on my bookshelf. I picked it up at a thrift market a few weeks back. I haven't actually read it yet though.
No, I've watched the movie. Have you watched the
Yeah.
original Dracula movie?
Sure. Yeah.
So one thing that you notice when you watch old movies is that they just give you the premise up front. The guy comes to a village and he's like, I'm gonna see Count Dracula. And they're like, oh, the vampire. Yeah, he lives in the spooky castle. And that's like the first 10 minutes. And then the rest of the movie is like, what's this vampire like? They don't spend 50 minutes or 40 minutes setting up, explaining the premise, introducing the characters. No, that comes later. They just get straight to it because they know you are there for a vampire movie. So I try to do that too, because I'm like, sometimes you have to suspend the disbelief because you know you're there for a horror story. It's an unspoken contract between reader and writer that there's going to be something scary. And yes, I like to build a lot of suspense and a lot of background because I think that adds to the horror. But sometimes you don't know what the horror is until you see it. It's like if I get imagine it's like really dark outside and something comes up and scratches you across the back. And then you get home and you see that it's like some kind of animal wound. The first thing you're thinking is not going to be, man, I wonder if that was a bear or a lynx. It's going to be, what the hell what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And I think that we need to go back a little bit and bring that thing back, because a lot of people are going to be asking, what was that thing? And they're going to focus on, what was that creature? Why did it hit you? Etc., etc. But sometimes you don't have those answers. Sometimes a creature is just a creature, and the horror comes from not knowing. So I try personally to not explain everything all the time, because I think that adds a dimension of horror.
I agree. I think a lot of the time the best horror is in the suspense of waiting to see the monster and not in actually seeing the monster itself. And it's something that took me a long time to realize as a horror writer. I feel like the more mature I get as a writer, the better I get at that, and the more I start to understand. That's the kind of horror that works best, and that like I actually enjoy, is when the monster's not right in your face. You're questioning. You're seeing a glimpse of him in the shadows. You're hearing rumors. I think that's a very effective way to scare people for sure. And it's nice to not have to explain everything. The fact that you don't have to give an explanation for every little thing in a story is one of those nice things about horror, that you can just leave it up to the reader's imagination.
And it's like, sometimes you're gonna get comments about it. People are gonna be like, you didn't tell us what this thing was. But some of my most popular stories revolve around the not telling. I did this one story called Stay in Your Vehicle. Because I love bottle episodes. I like things being in a small location.
Me too.
And I never really explain the creatures, because the character who tells the story has no idea what these things are. If I was to tell the story from another perspective, we might have like secret government agents speaking in code and whatever. But this is just some guy stuck in his car. And his story is going to look very different from the others, those who actually are in the know. And if we are honest to ourselves about where we would be in a horror story, we wouldn't be the secret agent with all the answers. We would be the guy stuck in the car.
100%, and that's the better angle to tell the horror story from, anyways, because that's the scarier place to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that story. That's one of my favorite ones of yours, actually.
Oh man,
I feel like that's such a relatable situation of being stuck in your car and just not knowing what's happening around you, know. And the idea of, I mean, I don't want to give away, but the idea of what happens in the story happening is terrifying for sure.
Yeah, but it's like, I remember reading some comments on a narration for that story, and one of the comments was like, he didn't explain why they sprayed down the cars. And it's like, out of all the things you've seen in this story, that's what you got focused on. why they sprayed down the cars. And there is a reason. I'm just not telling you because it's not relevant to the experience. I did explain it in another story at another time because all my stories are interconnected in some way. I like to reference back to them and give explanations in retrospect.
Right.
But the character doesn't know that. He's not a professional whatever. He's just some guy. So there might be answers, but you might have to look a little closer to find them.
Yeah. I like that a lot of your stories will retroactively explain the other stories.
Yeah.
Not all of them, not a lot of them, but the occasional one will give more details on something that happened in another story, and it kind of just makes everything feel a little bit richer. The lore makes the lore feel that much fuller and that much more like it's happening in a real universe, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this latest story that I wrote brings a lot to the table in that aspect, because it shows. Well, I'm not gonna spoil it for those who haven't read it, but it explains something that has been recurring for years. It pulls back the curtain a little, and I like to do it in pieces, like bring up a thing after a thing after a thing. For example, one story that I wrote early on was called "The Sad Sunflower." And it ended with an implication that a person in the story was impregnated by something. And there are actually several other stories who kind of tell the rest of their story just by reference. There's someone who says a weird patient got into. We took in a weird patient to the. Who went into labor. Another says there's this one kid in the ICU that only one doctor can see, etc., etc., etc. So, like, I like to do that kind of thing where I have some. There is a continuation to the story, but I don't like to just yell it out because I like there to be something for people to discover.
You have faith in your readers.
Well, not necessarily. Well, I do. I do have, but I don't expect them to find everything. It's mostly for me, honestly, because then I know that I have told that.
But it is fun though when people pick up those little Easter eggs.
Yeah, I love seeing that because I love seeing the discussions going on, and I always see them in narrations, in my stories, in my subreddit. And people, sometimes people just ask me outright, and they go to me and just, is this thing actually that? And I'm just like, maybe. But I love seeing the discussions, and it's been a long time since I had to answer any questions, honestly, because most of the times one of my readers step in to answer for me.
That's great.
I see that in narration comments all the time, where someone is like, hey, isn't that thing, I've heard about this thing somewhere else. And then someone else answers, yeah, it's from this story.
Right. Yeah, that's always nice, eh? When you don't have to even explain it, because other people have already noticed, I've already pieced it together. But they're not advertising it, though. They'll wait for somebody else to ask.
Yeah.
I get the question a lot with your stories. What do the blue sunflowers mean?
Yeah.
And I always just say it's your trademark. It's the trademark of the author Saturdead. But to you, is there a specific meaning to it that you would want to reveal at this stage, or is it something you're going to reveal later?
Well, I'm not that secretive about it, really. First of all, they are, like, if we look outside the meta story, the blue sunflowers are a signature. It's, instead of me just saying written by Saturdead, I include a blue sunflower. It's like a stamp. And I think that's an easy way for people to recognize it. And I know some people get really annoyed by it, and others are like, oh, I love this. It's the guy. So I prefer to write for those people.
Yeah.
But in universe, the sunflowers are there are several layers to it, but basically they are harbingers. of things to come. They promise that something bad is coming. It's like the ache you get before a fever. And it's basically on a global scale. The more sunflowers there are, the more they show that something bad is about to happen or has already happened.
Is there an origin to that somewhere else, or is this something that's purely from your imagination?
No, it's basically purely from my imagination, because I had this idea of an entity that is it self-actualizes, meaning it doesn't get born, it births itself. It wills itself into existence. It decides, I want to be, and it is. So it's completely unstoppable in that way, because you can't anticipate what something else might or might not want.
Yeah.
I wrote this story called The Department of Unknown Crises that kind of touches on the blue sunflowers, except there we call them the red lilies, but it's just a code word.
Right.
And I think that's the most comprehensive lore about the sunflowers themselves. And it's basically just that when they show up, they become like a lighthouse for other things to exist. They are in universe, they are just a sign that something bad is about to happen, because they shows that something bad is about to happen.
Yeah. And this week, the special TV channel, I feel like it really opened things up a little bit and kind of showed people like what those bad things potentially are, maybe a little bit in another world, which I don't know if you've fully shown yet, at least not in one that I've read. But it was, it was pretty terrifying.
Well,
it was like, yeah.
I know people are sick of multiverses. I know I'm one of them. But I couldn't tell the story of Tomskog without them, because the story of Tomskog is not just about the end of the world. It's about the end of every world, everywhere, all the time.
Yeah.
And I've hinted at this a few times with a longer story called I want to tell you about our film. And I've talked about concepts such as the world egg and EO, and there's a lot of things, and it all comes down to something bad is going to happen, and it won't just end the world, it will end everything. And I think that's far more terrifying, in a way that there's like a grand plan that goes far beyond what we actually can imagine. What does the end of eternity look like? That's unfathomable to me.
Yeah. It's raising the stakes as far as they will possibly go. The end of not just our world, but every single other world.
Yeah,
whichever writer is what you want to do. You want to raise the stake. Keep raising the stakes the further the series or the story goes along, right?
And that's why I had to come to the decision that you have to tell an ending to that kind of story. But I've been wrecking my head around, how do you end that kind of story? Because here's a spoiler that I can give right away. I will not just be like, and then everyone died. I'm not going to do that, because that's not storytelling for me. That doesn't give a proper solution.
Right.
That's just like, there are so many other things that can happen to a person that is both better and worse than dying.
Yeah.
I had this in December. I wrote this long 13-part series called Where the Bad Cops Go.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this one character, without spoiling too much, there's this one character that gets stuck in a situation where he is he's basically not reborn, he just does not die. And if he doesn't do a certain thing, something terrible is going to happen to people he loves. So it's like, you're going to be stuck here for basically eternity, unless you keep doing this one thing over and over and over. And that premise to me, like the Sisyphus thing of pushing a rock up a cliff and then it rolls back down over and over forever,
Yeah.
that's far more terrifying than dying.
Yeah.
Because then
it's almost like the time loop.
Yeah, it's like it makes you something less than human, because you're no longer about breathing, eating, sleeping. You're about pushing that rock.
Yeah.
If that is your sole purpose and that's all you do, then you are no longer human. It's basically body horror for the mind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like to experiment with. I like all kinds of horror, like body horror, psychological horror, Lovecraftian horror, and creature horror, all kinds. But I think there's something special just about putting a character in a situation that's awful, just the worst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one thing I've learned about writing is like you just have to make your main character's life as horrible as possible. Basically, is a lot of what writing is the author the character needs something, they need to get somewhere, they need to do something, and your job as the writer is just to make it as hard as possible for them and just make their life as shitty as possible.
Yeah, and I do that a lot, but every now and then I like to give them a win. Like, I like to give them something they've fought for and make them feel like, yeah, it was worth it at the end.
Yeah.
I remember like 3 years ago, a fan wrote to me and they said, "Your writing is so amazing, but it just makes me sad when no one ever wins."
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I don't want to make people sad. I want to make people think, and I want them to experience and maybe even get a laugh out of it. Like, oh my god, I'm glad that wasn't me. So I've actually changed my writing quite a bit over the years, because I don't just want to be depressing. I want horror is so much more than just depressing and scary, and it's also cathartic, just like writing itself. It's like a good horror story makes you feel like you appreciate things, and that's what I want to bring to the table.
Your dead name story last week. I feel like that was an amazing story, by the way, and kudos to you for taking on a controversial subject, which you don't know how people are going to react.
Yeah.
But I feel like the character in that got a win at the end.
Yeah.
Like if I'm remembering correctly, they it worked out kind of okay for them at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They went there. They got an ending to things, and yeah, that story was special to me. A friend of mine who is trans asked me a couple of months ago, like, "Dennis, why haven't you touched upon this subject in any of your stories?" And I was like, I don't have a good reason. I just haven't thought about it. So I know people were like on me. A lot of people were like, "You don't talk about this. Don't bring it up. It's going to get taken down from Nosleep, etc." But I was like, I want to tell this story, and there's no one that can really stop me, because it's about the story.
Yeah.
And I think that something a lot of people misses is that human experiences are universal. It doesn't matter where your insecurities or anxieties come from. What I bring up with the main character of that of Someone Stole Your Dead Name, that's something I can feel too, but in other ways. Horror is still horror, no matter how you tell it. There's a story there for everyone. I think we can all think it's just like, sure, for that person it was like an identity they have cast away, that they have decided to move on from, that comes back to haunt them. But everyone has that. Like, if I were to see someone take on 15-year-old Dennis and be me, but from that time, that was a completely different person from who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would experience the same thing. So it's just like thinking that horror is something that can only be told from one perspective or can only be experienced by a couple of people. That's wrong, because horror is universal in so many more ways than we can imagine.
Yeah, and I think everybody's story deserves to be told. And
absolutely.
Yeah, I thought that was a great story, and it wasn't just told for the sake of telling a story with that topic. It was
Yeah.
like a really well crafted story that I thought
Yeah,
completely worked.
I
Yeah,
I spent a lot of time on it because I watched a lot of documentaries and interviews. There's this one YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly. I don't know if you heard about it.
yeah,
I watch that a lot when I want to like really get into human experiences because I've lived a pretty sheltered life, honestly, but there are so many who hasn't. So
yeah,
I want to know their stories, and I think that inspires me too, not just in horror but in everyday, because it makes me more empathetic, and empathy is also something that I bring to my horror. Because if you are completely disillusioned by human experience, like you don't understand the perspective of others at all, then horror doesn't work for you. You can't put yourself in the shoes of others.
yeah. I can't imagine as a writer being able to write without having empathy. Like I feel like I'm a pretty empathetic person as well,
Yeah.
and I feel like you kind of need that as a writer to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and see it from their perspective.
Yeah, you gotta be like, I I won't say that all of most of my characters, I try to switch them up a bit, but most of the time it doesn't matter. Like I have a lot of characters where there's like, it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman or a trans man or a trans woman. It doesn't matter because that's not the point of the story. So most of the time I don't even bring it up. So I can say that in some of my stories, the character that I've had in mind isn't what other people have in mind, but it doesn't matter because the story would be told the same way either way.
Yeah.
It's like it's at the end of things, it's like I want to tell stories that are universal horror. That's someone old, someone young, anyone can understand in a way that brings a fear to or anxiety to light. And I think that goes beyond gender and sexuality.
Yeah, a good story is a good story, regardless. And yeah, I feel like did that get a fairly good response? Did you see a lot of hate comments to that or anything, or did you feel like the response was pretty even keeled on that one?
Well, there were a few. There's always going to be a few because whenever I make like a female character or a trans character or whatever, there's always going to be that one guy or woman who's going to be like, "Why did you have to do this? Why are you telling it that way?" But that goes for pretty much everything. Like when I tell stories that take place in different countries, which I've been doing this year, then there's going to be someone like, "Ugh, why didn't you tell me about this country instead?" So yeah, there's a few, but they have been a vast minority.
Yeah,
There's been so much outpour of love from this story. People who've been writing to me telling me that finally someone actually dares to talk about me, like my fears. And I think that's something that Nosleep does not do well in its current state. Because the rules are so restrictive that you can't tell real human horror stories in a way that fits all people. I remember I wrote a story about a man who had chronic pain. And this story was taken down and removed from Nosleep because it referenced a medical condition, and that's a
sure.
big no-no in Nosleep.
Yeah,
But I found that the story wasn't really about the chronic pain. It was about handling chronic pain and the lengths that people are prepared to go to in order to feel normal. And that's something that I think a lot of people can identify with. And I was actually sent a message from a man who had chronic pain, and he was like, I completely understand this character in a way that I haven't seen other characters. I can understand why they did what they did, the lengths they went to avoid that pain, and I'm glad someone can see it because that's a reality that I live with every day,
yeah,
and that to me is even more horrifying than my story because, like, people have to actually deal with this. These are real issues.
Yeah, chronic pain is a very scary one for sure. But not an easy life to to be in pain every day. I can't imagine how people deal with that and keep a smile on their face, or have a positive outlook when you're just always in pain. It's such a drain on your life force. Like if anybody who's had chronic pain or it's
And it's
tough one to live with.
It's not just about the pain either. It's also about like tinnitus, for example.
Mhm.
That's a chronic condition too, and I don't have it. And I've tried. I had a story that I wanted to write that was inspired by tinnitus, but I couldn't make it work, so I just scrapped it. But it's just something chronic that you can't understand what it's like not having it.
Yeah.
That's very scary. So whenever I write about something like blindness or deafness or whatever, or I had this one story about a man who couldn't taste things, then I almost always start the story with them having that sense and then losing it, because then I can understand. But being born without it, that's beyond my reality, and that's much harder to describe.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah, from a writer's perspective, it would be easier to get in that person's shoes a little bit, as opposed to somebody who's lived with blindness their entire life.
Yeah.
Is going to have a very different outlook on life, maybe, or a different perspective than we would, maybe.
Definitely.
Yeah. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're probably a busy guy, and I know it's getting late there where you are. So I'll let you go. Do you have anything you want to promote or let people know about? If anybody who's watching this.
No, I'm just happy to have so many loyal, faithful, and active readers. I'm very happy with my community, and with I'm also very happy with the narrator community. I'm very thankful for what you do, Jordan, and it's great to see stories being told to such a wide audience. Not just mine, but just stories in general. I like that we have come to a point where narrated stories are making a sort of comeback, in my view. And I think that's very important, because being told a story is one of the most natural things in the world. So to have people not just narrate, but also to listen to that narration, I think it's very important, and I'm glad to see that it's getting so popular.
That's really kind of you
for
to
your
say.
work too.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for letting me and so many other narrators read your stuff. I mean, I'm very grateful to you for all the hard work that you put in. I know it's a lot easier reading a story than it is writing a story, and I know how much time it takes to put something together. And so yeah, I really appreciate all the hard work you put in every week, and the dedication that you have to do this every week, because it's a lot of dedication.
It is, but it's not going away anytime soon.
Well, that's good. I look forward to reading more of your stuff, hopefully for years to come, and seeing what you do next after your current project. I know you were kind of saying things are coming to a conclusion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next as well.
There's gonna be more stuff. I can promise that.
I look forward to it.
Well, that's I don't really have anything else to share. I'm just very thankful to be here, and thank you for having me.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time, Dennis. I really appreciate you.
No problem. And let me know if you have any other questions. I'm always around.
Okay, I will for sure.
All right then. Have a good night.
All right. Take care. Have a good night. All right, I hope you enjoyed my talk with Saturdead as much as I did. The story about the bear gave me chills. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this talented author does next, and I can't wait to see where the multiverse of blue sunflowers is heading. Please join me next week on Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another author interview. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment to let me know what you thought of this episode of The Group Project.